Hey friends, time for another bad science Sunday, and this is a bad one. It really makes me angry because this is where crank science infiltrates into genuine research publications, and it's particularly poisonous. I also expect that this video will probably get demonetized. Why? Because I'm going to be talking about COVID-19. And, in some ways it's a good thing that these social media companies like Facebook and Google are actually slightly policing their products, and in that they will demonetize and slap a label on anything that talks about controversial topics like COVID and flat Earth, and not creationism, strangely, but I guess those other two are more pressing concerns for public health. So Google's, okay, I don't like it much, but they're still pretty good about, acknowledging and marking that bad videos that spread disinformation. Unfortunately, they're a little bit crude about it, and they also slap the same label on videos that criticize crank science. So that's my category. I'm going to be criticizing crank science here. Now, unfortunately, not everything is quite even that careful about policing bad science. And so I'm going to be talking about a paper that was published by Elsevier. Okay, Elsevier, if you're in the know, is the worst. They are the worst of the publishers that parasitize good science research. They're publishers. They charge buckets of money for, to access their journals. They have some predatory practices. They're terrible, and I'm not going to get too deeply into the weeds on Elsevier, but I despise Elsevier. Now, this paper comes with a preface page. That's a little unusual. And let me read to you what this preface page says. It says, since January 2020, Elsevier has created a COVID-19 resource center with free information in English and Mandarin on the novel coronavirus COVID-19. Elsevier hereby grants permission to make all of its COVID-19 related research that is available on the COVID-19 Resource Center, including this research content, immediately available in PubMed Central and other publicly funded repositories, which they ought to do with everything they publish. Anyway, so they're granted these permissions for free as long as this resource center remains active. So isn't that nice of them? They are making this paper freely available to everyone. Wow, how generous of Elsevier. And then you look at the paper. So this paper, let me tell you the title. Origin of New Emergent Coronavirus and Candida Fungal Diseases, Terrestrial or Cosmic. Oh, yeah, it's the Panspermia Mafia again. So this is, the first author on this paper is Edward J. Steele, Ted Steele, who is notorious as a proponent of Lamarckian evolution. Yeah, he's not a credible source. And the last author is Chandra Wickramasinghe, who's always on these papers. Oh, yes, okay, there's Chandra. Whenever you see Chandra Wickramasinghe's name, you know the paper is going to be total garbage. And that's true for this one, which was freely released thanks to the generosity of Elsevier. Wickramasinghe is just, I've talked about him before. He's a real character. He was a student of Fred Hoyle and has been milking that association for decades. He's all he talks about is panspermia. And like Fred Hoyle also is saying that modern diseases that appear, modern epidemics, are the product of infall. That is, viruses and bacteria, and apparently fungi now too, falling from the heavens to the earth and infecting people. Somehow Wickramasinghe has managed to maintain a whole bunch of professional affiliations. So here on his paper, he's associated with the Center for Astrobiology, University of Ruhuna, Matara, Sri Lanka. He's also affiliated with the Institute for the Study of Panspermia and Astroeconomics, based in Gifu, Japan. I know he works at the Buckingham Center for Astrobiology, the University of Buckingham in the United Kingdom. Yeah, he's got tentacles in everywhere. And he's also associated with the National Institute of Fundamental Studies in Sri Lanka. Okay. This is the thing. He's managed to wangle his way into all these affiliations with all these institutions that allow him to continue this scam he's got of constantly publishing bad papers advocating panspermia. Okay, so this one, what is he going to say? Well, he's not going to say much. He's going to make an argument that coronavirus comes from outer space. A bad argument, a not very good argument. In his introduction, he also claims that SARS, MERS, Zika, and HIV all came raining down on us from outer space. Do you believe him? I sure don't. He doesn't have any evidence for that. So he also claims that all these HERVs are also from outer space. This is a stunning sentence. The astute and engaged reader of all that evidence is left with only one conclusion. The Spanish flu disease came from space on a massive scale and killed tens of millions before the advent of air travel. So yeah, the flu is also from outer space. This paper is going to focus then on Candida, this fungal disease, and also on COVID-19. And he says these two epidemics display distinctive features and clear evidence that they may have come from a space infall of infectious viruses and microorganisms in cometary dust or meteorite-derived dust particles. Oh, gosh. Let's see if he's going to give us any evidence for that. I can tell you right now he's not. I'll just briefly mention his stuff on Candida. Candida, this Candida auris is a novel infection. It was first described in, I think it was 2019. And he wants to claim that that's when it came down from outer space and infected people. He's got no evidence for this. It's just everything in their minds is from outer space. So basically all he can say is, well, there are these different strains. There's multiple strains of Candida auris, and it's been assessed genomically. It's been sequenced, and the thing is, the data all says that this particular strain is related to existing strains on Earth. Somehow, though, that gets translated into his mind that they came from outer space, which makes no sense. If we've got close genetic relatives to this particular strain right here on planet Earth, isn't it more likely that these are the result of variations in existing strains? And so you can't make this argument. But he does. I think what helps him make this argument is that he thinks all fungi came from outer space. So there's that. The other argument he makes, and this is true for his origin of COVID-19, is that he says, oh gosh, look, that we've had a sunspot minimum recently. What does that imply? Well, he's arguing that when sunspots are minimum, that reduces the solar wind, and the solar wind is blowing outwards and preventing all these diseases from raining in on us. So you have to wait for a sunspot minimum, and then poof, they just kind of blow in from deepest space and land on Earth. So he says, whenever we have these solar minimums, then we would therefore expect a significantly enhanced flux of both cosmic rays as well as electrically charged biological entities at this time. So the arrival of a new clade of CRS from a space source should not be ignored. But he hasn't shown that it came from outer space. All the evidence suggests that these are related forms to earthly species. Okay, we shouldn't ignore it. All right, good. The other thing he does is he plots this data. So I'm going to show you this bizarre chart. This is a chart of the number of sunspotless days in the sunspot cycle. And what he says is this shows the period 2008-2009 to be the lowest on record for a century. And strangely, this graph doesn't. Okay? 2008 was the second lowest. So he's kind of fudging his numbers here a little bit. Of course, you could argue 1913 was even lower, therefore it's somehow associated with the arrival of the flu at that time. Well, the flu arrived a little later than that too, but you know, it was just sneaking in a couple of years before on this availability of an absence of the solar wind. Okay, so that's pretty weak evidence. This does not support his claims at all. What else does he have to marshal to provide evidence for this? Well, he's got a figure here of the frequency of the disease of COVID-19 in various areas of China, and he says here, it actually looks like a huge viral bomb explosion took place near or over Wuhan, and then the radial fallout of the disease causing viral particles to land on the millions of people either laterally or from above. Okay, so look at this diagram. Could you argue that it's bomb-like? That's kind of a stretch. That it seems to show that the highest incidence was around Wuhan, which is thought to be the origin of the particular infection that we're concerned about. And then it spread to other places, which would give you exactly the same distribution of a large central locus of infection and others all around. Sure, you could pretend it looks like a bomb went off, but it was a slow-moving bomb over many months, and it could equally well be explained by viral spread, by more conventional means, okay? Yeah, so that's his primary evidence of this. Two things, right? A decrease in sunspot activity plus this bomb-like pattern. Then the kicker for him, but for nobody else, is that there was a meteor collision in October of 2019 in China. Maybe that's the meteor that arrived on. We have to think about a few things here, though. First, of course, one is, you know, if it's a meteor that's crashing Earth, why would that be affected by the solar wind? So that doesn't make sense. He simultaneously wants to argue that we've been moving through these clouds of viral particles that are pushed away by the solar wind, and also that we can associate particular disease epidemics with the sudden arrival of meteors and comets and things like that. So he's going to make this argument. He's going to call it a detailed analysis of the COVID-19 epidemic. It's not a detailed analysis. And the problem is that this particular meteorite did arrive October 2019, which you could say is somewhere in the ballpark of the calendar that we need. The problem is that it didn't crash into Wuhan. It's a meteor that was observed 2,000 kilometers north of Wuhan. So why isn't our bomb pattern centered on that particular location? Well, he's got a hand-wavy explanation for that, of course. It's that as it was passing through the atmosphere, the meteor was shedding little fragments as it goes, so it formed a tube-like pattern of distribution of the virus. Of course, when you look at the big bomb-like explosion pattern, there's nothing tube-like about it. It looks like something roughly centered on Wuhan. Okay, then he's got to deal somehow with the scientific evidence that's out there that says that, hey, this is a virus that's related to other viruses that we've already got on the planet, right? That it's related to, it could have been transmitted from bats or pangolins or anything. And what is his explanation for this? He says, this explanation is at odds with the data at present. What data? This is the paper where he should be presenting this evidence, right? And he doesn't. He just simply asserts that it doesn't fit. So he's going to say that it's now associated with this meteorite over central northeast China in October, and sunspots. But let's just ignore the molecular data that says the virus is closely related to coronaviruses right here on planet Earth, and that the easiest explanation is that we've got a mutation that generated a novel form of the coronavirus that was able to exploit weaknesses in the human immune system. That's it. But see, this is the kind of crap that really gets me upset, because now this has been published in a respected journal, Advances in Genetics. How? I don't know. It should not have passed peer review. The editors should have slapped this one down right at the beginning when it was submitted, but somehow it got through and published. And then further, Elsevier thinks this is a worthy part of the data set for understanding the origin of the virus, and has made it freely available to everyone out there. What's my conclusion here? Well, there's a couple things to watch out for. There are some really good Elsevier journals out there, because that's what Elsevier does, is it exploits good journals and then maintains a stable of crap journals that they sell in association with the good stuff. What it means is that if it's published by Elsevier, don't trust it. Bottom line, Elsevier is poison, so don't trust anything under the Elsevier imprint. The other thing I'd mention is that Wickramasinghe is just a real exploiter of the scientific methods of publication. It's shameful. This guy constantly he and his cronies are getting constantly published just by rehashing garbage assertions about bacteria and viruses and fungi falling from, or diatoms, he's also done that, where everything is raining down from space constantly. And we're supposed to ignore the fact that, no, we've got a coherent explanation for the origin of life on Earth and for the diversity of life on Earth, and we can actually measure molecularly the proximity of one species to another. This is just mind-boggling that this nonsense can make it, that it can actually get published. It's the kind of thing that makes a person mistrust science in general, because it's clearly a crony enterprise. There's a lot of garbage that's getting published out there, and this is an example of it. There's great science being published out there, and peer review is a good method for weaning through things, except when you've got people like Chandra Wickramasinghe, who manages to build up a little coterie of buddies embedded in universities and publishing houses that let his garbage sail through uncriticized. Except for nobody YouTubers who notice it and can point out that, oh man, look at this garbage that's being published. So yeah, don't trust anything by Chandra Wickramasinghe or anyone who publishes with him. Total trash. Okay. Well, I will stop there. If you want to read the paper, you can, because it is freely available, thanks to the generosity of Elsevier. And you can go look at it for yourself, and you'll see he presents no evidence, except these coincidental associations with meteor strikes which occur 5 to 10 times a year on planet Earth. So yeah, you can find associations with a meteor strike for just about anything. So he's got that solar wind. Again, these are incoherent explanations. Is it viruses floating in space, or is it viruses growing in meteors or comets, or whatever? He doesn't care, just so it comes from space. So I'll leave it at that. Chandra Wickramasinghe, you're an asshole. And I'm sick of seeing your stuff getting published. Okay, get that off my chest. Now, let's take a look at my good buddies here, all these wonderful people who are supporting me on Patreon. You can find my Patreon link down below. Yeah, I'd love to see more people signing up there, because I have an important goal to perform with the revenues I get from Patreon. And so sign up, and then I will put your name up here too. Look at these wonderful people. Much nicer than Chandra Wickramasinghe, who's not giving me anything at all. That must be the source of my resentment. But then I'm not exploiting scientific institutions in order to make a bogus name for myself as a purveyor of garbage science, unlike Chandra Wickramasinghe. Oh man, I get angry when yeah. This guy, he's just awful. He's the one who's also been publishing all this nonsense about fungi on Mars and skulls of dead Martians seen in probes on Mars. And I expect him any day to start telling me, oh well, we're finding skulls of people floating in outer space in the asteroid belt or whatever. Anywhere a probe goes, he will distort the results of that story to claim that all kinds of vestiges of life are there. And it's particularly annoying because he doesn't have any credentials or credibility in biology or evolutionary biology or epidemiology. Here he is getting published in a genetics journal. Okay. I think I'll go cool off somewhere. Talk to y'all next week. Or sooner, who knows.